Hello, welcome to my channel. This is T-Spec. I am Tim Tokwe. I'll be using this fabric for this tutorial. I have 1.5 yards of each, making 3 yards. So I've gone ahead to draw a straight line to indicate the beginning of the pattern. So I'll be taking our horizontal measurements. I'll be marking the bust point, which is 10 inches. That's the shoulder to nipple. Then the under bust, shoulder to the under bust. That's 13 inches. And I'll also be marking the half length, that is shoulder to the waistline, so that's 15 inches. So I'm marking it like that so that I can get a straight line. So I'll go ahead to use my ruler to mark a straight line across the lines. So for this tutorial, I will not be adding any allowance on the pattern. The allowance will be added on the main fabric. So the next thing I'll be doing is to take the neck measurements. I'll be using 3.5 by 3 inches. So 3.5 horizontally and while 3 inches downward, that is vertically. So I'll be using my curve rule just like I'm placing it to mark the neckline. I'll be adding half of an inch to the shoulder measurement. The shoulder is 15.5, so I added half of an inch, making 16. This is because this is a corporate wear, and so I'm going to divide that shoulder measurement by 2. That will give me 8 inches, so I've marked it. And I've also come down by 1 inch and then draw a slant to the neckline to form the shoulder slope. And so I'll be getting my armhole depth. To do that, I'm going to divide my bust measurements by 6 and then add 1.5 inch allowance, and that will serve as the armhole depth. And so to get the armhole curve, I'm going to locate the middle of the armhole line, and then at that middle point I'm going to come in by half of an inch, and then I'm going to go ahead and take my curve rule and make a curve with it to mark the shoulder slant. So I'm going to make sure that it touches all the points just like I am doing, and then I'm going to go ahead to mark it. And so let's just go ahead to label the line so that we don't get confused. That's the chest line, the under bust, the half length. And so we'll be using the nipple to nipple measurements for the dart, and the nipple to nipple measure for this client is 7 inches divided by 2, that will be 3.5. And so I'm going to mark that also on the bust point, 3.5 inches, and then I'm going to use my ruler to draw a straight line to connect the lines. And then on the waistline, I'll be taking half of an inch on both sides, and then I'll be drawing a line to meet the bust point, but I'll not let it get exactly to the bust point. I'm going to stop about an inch before the bust point. And for this tutorial, I'll be making use of the shoulder dart. And so on the shoulder line, I'm going to locate the middle, and at that middle point I'm going to make a mark there and then connect it to the bust point, just like you are seeing me do. And then we can take our horizontal measurements now. So on the chest line, we'll be taking our bust measurement. The bust measurement divide by 4, and then I'm going to take that, mark that. And also at the under bust line, I'm also going to divide the under bust measurements by 4 and then mark it. Then the allowance, for the dart allowance, the space there is half of an inch. I'm also going to place it back. And also the waistline, I'm going to divide the waist by 4 and mark it. Then I'm going to measure the allowance, so the dart allowance, then place it back. So you can notice that for this tutorial, it's just the dart allowance that I'm putting. I'm not adding any other allowance. The other allowance will be added on the fabric. Next is the side dart, and to get this, we are going to be using the difference between the half length of the back and that of the front. For this client, the back is 14 inches and the front is 15, and that's the difference of 1 inch. And I've gone ahead to mark that below the bust point, and I'll be connecting it towards the dash line like you see me do, but I'm not going to let it get there. I'm going to stop an inch before that. For you to get this, you have to measure the half length separately for the front and that of the back. So for here, this is the dart, and I'll be closing that up. So I would pick it like that, then cover it up. I'm going to tape it down with a tape. So you can see it might not be very easy to do, but if you find your way around, you are going to be able to do it. Another part, sometimes it does not even align when you tape it down. So you have to make sure to mark it. tape it down like this, then use your marker to adjust the line so that it can align before you cut. So now that will be the new line that I'll be cutting. So I'll go ahead to use a tape to tape it down. And next we'll be drafting the back bodice, and so we'll be marking our vertical measurements, relocating the bust points, the under bust, as well as the half length. So the half length is shorter than that of the front. For the front is 15, and here we are marking 40 inches for the half length. As I'm going to use my ruler to draw an horizontal line around the points. The next I'll be doing is to label the line so that we'll know what to do. We'll know which is which. And then I'm also going to be marking the zip allowance. I like to do that on my pattern. So I'll be using 1 inch for the zip allowance. So I'll mark that on the starting point and on the waistline. So I'm drawing a straight line to indicate that. Next is the neck measurement. So I'll be coming down by 1 inch, and then I'll be using 3.5 inches by 1. So 3.5 horizontally, then 1 inch down, that is vertically. And then I'm going to use my curve rule to mark it just like I am doing. And the next thing is the shoulder. Remember that we added half of an inch to our shoulder measurement before dividing it by 2, and so that's what I'm doing here. So I've divided it by 2, and then I'm going to come down by 1 inch and then connect it to the neckline. So that's the shoulder slope. And then I'll also be getting my nipple, my armhole depth, and so just like I did to the front, the bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5 inch, and then I'm going to connect it with a straight line to the chest line. So I'll be locating the middle of the armhole line, and at that middle point I'm going to come in by half of an inch, and at that I'm going to take my curve rule and place it in such a way that it will connect all the points, and then draw the armhole slope. So now I'll be indicating the dart allowance. I'll also be using the nipple to nipple measurement. I'll divide it by 2, which is 3.5. But in this case, I like to add half of an inch to it. Why? Because I'm going to be taking some allowance away from there to eliminate the zip bulge. So it kind of wants to become too close. So I like to add half of an inch so that by the time I do that, it will not be too close. So instead of 3.5, I'll be taking 4 inches. And I'll also be taking that on the chest line. So then I'm going to draw a straight line across it. And then on both sides on the waistline, I'm going to be taking half of an inch on both sides. That will be the dart line. And then I'll connect it to the chest line. And before then, I'm going to let it stop an inch before the chest line. And so that's what I'm doing. I'll be drawing the line with my ruler. And then on the shoulder line, I'm going to divide into 2, find the middle point to get our shoulder dart. So I'll be connecting it to the dart just like this, and then we'll be going ahead to take our horizontal measurements. So you can see I'm starting my tape not from the zip allowance, but from, you can see where I'm starting it from. So the bust measurement divided by 4, I've marked it. And the next I'll be going to the under bust line. I'll also divide the under bust measurements by 4. I'll mark it. Then I'm going to measure the dart allowance there and place it back here. And also on the waistline, I'm going to divide the waist measurement by 4. I'll mark it on the waistline and also measure the dart allowance. That's 1 inch, and I'm also going to place it back here. So I've just done that. Then I'm going to connect it with my curve rule. Next, we'll be taking some inches away on the waistline to eliminate the zip bulge. So on the waistline, I'll be taking 3/4 of an inch, that is half plus quarter. So then we are going to take the ruler and then mark it just like I do. And then that allowance there, I'm going to be adding it back here on the waistline. And also, some I noticed that if I just draw it like that, it's going to be somehow too sharp. So I also measure on the under bust line what I already take out there, and I'm also going to place it back here too. So then I'm going to take my curve rule and then connect the line back to the original bodies like this, just like I am doing. So this way I will not have too much sharp. It will not be too sharp. It will blend perfectly to the bodies. So now we'll be cutting it away. So we'll be drafting the lower part, which is the skirt pattern. So I'm going to subtract the half length from the gown length, and so the remaining will give me the skirt length. And so for this I have 27 inches, and that's my skirt length. So I'll be measuring the waistline. So that's the beginning, from the beginning, the front line. So I'm going to measure the waistline. I'll be dividing waistline by 4 and then mark it, and I'm also going to add 1 inch for that allowance. Then I'll be locating my hip line. To do that, I'm going to use my shoulder to hip measurement. So I'm going to put my tape at 15 inches mark, which is the half length. So that will serve as the half length. Then my shoulder to hip is 27, so I'm just going to mark it there. So that will be my hip line. Then I'm going to use my ruler to draw a straight line across it. Then I'll be dividing the hip by 4 into 4. So then I'm going to mark it. Then for the lower part, which is the end of the skirt, I'm going to reduce. I'm not going to use the same thing for this. I'm going to be using 9.5 instead of 10 inches. Then I'm going to use my curve rule to mark the hip measurements. Then I'm going to turn it to the other way around, then connect it to the lower part. So for the lower part, if the person had been younger, I would have reduced 1 inch from the hip allowance. But because the person is a bit advanced in age, so that was why I reduced just half inch from the hip measurements. Then I'll be using the nipple to nipple measurement for the dart allowance. So that's 3.5. Then I'm going to come down by 4 inches and then draw a straight line. Then on both sides, at the upper part, I'm going to take half of an inch on both sides. Then connect it to that point to form the dart. And so for this pattern, for this tutorial, I will not be holding the dart. So I'll just be closing it up and then taping it down. So that's what I'm trying to do. So I'll just go ahead and cut it off. So now I've placed the front pattern on the back pattern to cut out the back pattern. So there I'll be leaving the zip allowance. I'll be leaving 2 inches for zip allowance because there's going to be an overlap at the end of the skirt, at the back of the skirt. So that's why I make it 2 inches. If not, I would have just make it 1 inch. So because I need 1 inch for the zip allowance, I'm going to be marking 1 inch off from the 2 inches allowance that we put here. So I'm going to be marking that down, and I'm going to stop about 7 inches away from the end of the skirt pattern because there is going to be a slit, and the slit is going to stop at that 7 inches mark. So I'm going to take my ruler and then draw a straight line to that 7 inches point. And at that point, I'm going to make a slant just like I am doing. So that will serve as our skirt slit. And then this other part, I'm going to be cutting it off. So now I'm going to take my scissors and then cut off that part. And then the rest will be for our zip allowance. So that at that zip allowance point, I'm going to come in by 3/4 of an inch, that is 1/2 of an inch, to eliminate the zip bulge. So I'm going to mark that there at the waistline. Then I'm going to take my ruler and then connect it towards the zip allowance just to blend into the other bodies. So just like you see me do here. Then on the other side, I'm going to be placing back that allowance, that what the measurements I've cut away, the 3/4 of an inch. I have to place it back on the other side on the waistline. So I'm going to mark 3/4 of an inch on that other side, and then I'm going to be connecting it to the hip line. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. So now I'm going to take my curve rule and then connect it to the hip line. So now I'll be cutting everything out just to leave the actual pattern there. And so I'm going to raise that pattern up, the front pattern up, so that I'm going to get the dart line. Then from that dart point, I'm going to come down by 6 inches. Remember that the front pattern came down by 4 inches. So the back pattern, I'm going to come down by 6 inches. And then on both sides, I'm going to be taking away 1/2 of an inch and then connecting it to the end of the dart line, just like you see me do. And so I'll be taping this down just like I did to the front. I said I was not going to hold it that. I'm just going to tape it down and then cut it on the fabric like that. So I'm taping it down with a tape. Cut out the front skirt bodice pattern. You can see it's on fold. So I added 1/2 of an inch allowance on the upper part. I added 1 inch on the side and also 1 inch on the side. And this is the back. I added 1/2 inch. It's also on fold. 1/2 inch on the zip side and the slit area. I added 1/2 inch on the waist area. And then on the other side, I added 1 inch. And then on the lower part 1 inch. This is also the upper part, the back bodies. And so I've added 1/2 inch allowance round it. It's only on the side that I have 1 inch allowance. On the zip area is also 1/2 inch. The lower part 1/2 inch, but on the side I have 1 inch. Then this is the front pattern for the upper bodies. So it's on fold, no allowance there. Then on the dart line there is allowance, 1/2 inch of allowance, 1/2 inch on the lower part. Then on the side I have 1 inch. Next we'll be drafting the peplum part. So we'll be drafting directly on the fabric. The fabric has already been folded into two. So we'll be drafting 180 degrees peplum. So to do this, what I usually do is I usually divide the waist by 4 and I add 2 inches. That's what gives me the waistline. So I'll be marking that after dividing by 4, I added 2 inches. I have 9 3/4. Then I'll be marking that around. And then before I curve with my chalk, I'm just going to check with the tape rule. And so when I checked, and I'll multiply what I have by 2, so that will give me the waistline. But this is giving me exactly the waistline, but I want it to be a bit bigger than the waist because the peplum is going to overlap a little. So I'm going to add 1/2 of an inch to that and then continue to make that cone. And so this will make the waist to expand a bit. And so I'll just use my chalk to chalk it around. Anytime I use my tape to measure, I got something a little bigger than the waist. So then I want the peplum length to be 8 inches. And so instead of now marking 8 inches from that cone that I already drew, I'm just going to add 8 inches to the length that I used to get this cone, which is 10 inches. So that will be 18 inches. So I'll just still place my tape at that beginning and just measure 18 inches. So by the time I cut it out, I'll still have 8 inches. I don't know if you get that. So I'm going to curve it around my chalk before cutting it out. And so it actually gives me my desired length. And that will be our 180 degrees peplum. I'm going ahead to cut the lining for the peplum. And so I'm going to be dividing this peplum into two, folding it into two. I want to cut it into 2 different parts. The peplum has 2 sections. So I'm going to fold it into 2. But I want one part to be longer than the other because that's the way the style is. So to do that, after locating the middle, then I'm going to add the 3.5 inches to that middle one, so that one part will be like 3/4 and the other part will be like 1/4 of it. So that's what I do here, the half of the peplum, I added 3.5 inches to it. So that's what gave me this, because it's 3.5 inches that I use for the dart allowance. Like when I divide the darts by 2, I use 3.5. I hope you get that. So I want the shorter one to be 6 inches, so I'll be reducing 2 inches by it. So that's what I've marked here. And then the longer one, I want it to form like a V shape. So I'm going to use my curve rope to connect it to that. You can notice that I'm cutting it together with the lining because I don't want it to stress me. So that's kind of a shortcut for me. So I'm going to cut it away like that. So the longer part, we have a part that is longer and the other part will be short, just like you are seeing. And so it's going to be intersecting at this point. When I had to draw a straight line to indicate the starting point for the sleeve pattern. So we'll be locating the cap height first, and to do this we'll be using a simple formula. Divide the bust measurement by 10 and then add 1 inch to it. So for this I have 4.7. And then the next thing I'll be doing is to take the front bodice, the shoulder, the armhole part, and then I'm going to measure the armhole. For this I got 9 inches, and I'm going to be adding 1 inch to that. Then I'm going to place it just like this and then mark it on the paper, on the cap length. So then I'm going to take my rule and connect the points like I am doing. So I'll just rule it around that. And so I'm going to be locating the middle of this line, which is 5 inches. I'm going to mark it there, and then I'm going to take my curve rule and place it like this, and then connect to the middle point. So it didn't mark very well, let me mark it well. And then I'm going to be turning the curve on the other way around, and the remaining half part I'm going to connect it to the end line. So you can see the way I do, so you can exactly like this. I have a tutorial about how to draft a basic sleeve pattern, you can check that out. So the next thing I'll be getting is the biceps line. So I'll be using 8 inches for that, and so that's the biceps line. And the next we build the elbow line, that is the round sleeve very close to the elbow. So that's 12 inches, and I'm going to mark. Then after that I'll be getting the length of the sleeve. So the sleeve length is 23, is a long sleeve, so I'll be adding 1 inch to it, so that will give me 24 inches. So I'm going to mark that also, and also draw a straight line on it. And then we'll be using a round sleeve measurement. So for the biceps round sleeve, I'll be dividing it into 2, and so I'll be adding 1 inch allowance to it. And also for the round sleeve around the elbow line, the part very close to the elbow, I'll also be dividing that into 2 and adding 1 inch allowance too. And then the wrist, round sleeve for the wrist, I'm also going to be dividing that into 2 and add 1 inch allowance to it. So I'm going to connect the lines together. So I'll be connecting from the cap height to the biceps line to the elbow line, and then I'll be connecting to the wrist line. But before that, I'm going to mark 1 inch. Remember that I've added the allowance on this sleeve pattern, and so I'm going to be folding it by 1 inch. So I'm going to mark that 1 inch. If not, the folding will not be straight. It's going to give me a bit of difficulty. So I'm going to now connect this line to that 1 inch line that I've drawn. So now this is all that I need. I've added all the necessary allowance. I'm not going to add any other allowance while cutting on the fabric. I've placed the pattern on the fabric, and the fabric is on fold, so I'll be cutting it out. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. This is really going to encourage me, and I'm going to uploading a video showing the sewing tutorial. So guys, this is the end result. This is what we got after sewing the fabric, and see how beautiful it is. So kindly share this tutorial, comment, and also subscribe to my channel. Thank you. See you in my next video. Bye.